You don't get suspicious when people treat you badly. You get suspicious when they're calm, consistent, and kind for no obvious reason. Part of you wants to relax into it. Another part starts scanning for the catch before your body lets you enjoy it. You can survive distance, mixed signals, and disappointment. But genuine care can feel harder to trust than neglect ever did. Neglect makes sense to a nervous system trained for uncertainty. Steady affection asks you to believe something you were never taught to expect. So when someone shows up clearly, your mind doesn't always call it safe. Sometimes it calls it unfamiliar, and unfamiliar can feel dangerous. That's why good treatment doesn't always land as comfort. Sometimes it lands as pressure, exposure, or a quiet panic you can't explain. You start watching their tone more closely. You reread simple texts like they must contain something your chest already decided is there. If they reply warmly, you relax for a second. Then you wonder why they sound so warm and what changed underneath it. If they remember small things about you, it touches something deep. Then it scares you that they now have access to something real. And if they stay patient when you're distant, that can be the strangest part. It removes the excuse to keep believing nobody could handle you. People often think trust issues are about obvious betrayal. Sometimes they're about what happens when care reaches the places you keep armored. Because being treated well is not just pleasant, it is revealing, and revelation can feel more threatening than rejection. Rejection hurts, but it also confirms an old map. Good treatment interrupts that map, and your whole system scrambles to redraw reality. That scramble can look subtle from the outside. You get a little colder, a little busier, or suddenly very hard to read. Sometimes you delay replying because you need space. Sometimes you delay because kindness is making you more visible than you planned. You may say you want honesty and directness. Then someone gives you both, and you feel restless instead of relieved. Not because you don't want love, because some part of you learned that closeness usually arrives with disappointment, control, or withdrawal. So now your body doesn't only react to danger, it also reacts to the possibility of needing someone who could someday matter. That's the part people miss. Distrust is not always a response to cruelty. Sometimes it's a defense against future grief. If you expect little, you can stay prepared. If you let good treatment in, you risk being changed by it. And being changed by love is not a small thing. It means your usual guardrails stop feeling enough. It means someone's consistency could soften you, and softness can feel beautiful right before it feels unbearable. This is why some people can name their feelings in private, but the moment care becomes mutual, they start speaking in half-sentences. Hidden pain is easier to manage than exposed need. Once someone sees what matters to you, the stakes get painfully real. That's why reassurance gets complicated. You want it deeply, but you hate what it reveals about how much you need it. So instead of asking, you monitor. You track pauses, energy shifts, and tiny changes in attention like they might explain everything. If they offer patience, you appreciate it. Then you worry they're seeing how difficult you are and deciding whether it's worth it. Good treatment can feel suspicious when your early experience taught you that care was inconsistent, conditional, or emotionally expensive. Maybe the people you needed were loving in some moments. In other moments, they were unreachable, overwhelmed, or impossible to read. So you learned not to trust the first warm moment. You learned to wait for the emotional weather to change. And that lesson doesn't disappear because you're older. It follows you into adult intimacy with a quieter voice and better clothes. Sometimes it is healthy caution, but sometimes it is old emotional memory wearing a very polished face. You tell yourself you're just taking things slow. Meanwhile, your whole body is bracing for the drop you assume is coming. When someone is steady, the alarm gets confused. It has no familiar enemy, so it starts looking for invisible ones. So you keep waiting for the switch, the colder text, the delayed call, the moment their eyes go distant. And when it doesn't happen right away, you don't always relax. Sometimes you get more anxious because now you have more to lose. Because once you trust, your reactions get bigger. Their absence matters more, their tone matters more, and your own hope gets harder to control. That's why you may pull back right after a good date, or go strangely numb after a deeply honest conversation. It isn't always disinterest. Sometimes it is the nervous system recovering from being open longer than it knows how to tolerate. You leave the conversation missing them already, and still decide not to text first, just to feel less exposed. You fall asleep thinking about how safe they felt, then wake up looking for reasons that safety might have been a misread. That question can haunt whole relationships. Not because the other person is doing something wrong, but because your trust keeps asking for proof. Proof helps for a moment, then fear moves the goalpost. They make time for you, and it means everything. Then you worry you are becoming too important and will eventually become too much. This is one of the cruelest parts of not trusting good treatment. The thing you want most can activate the defenses that keep it far away. So you may become hardest to read precisely when you care most. You may act least impressed by what actually reaches you deepest. Or you suddenly focus on practical details, anything to escape the rawness of being emotionally touched in real time. Sometimes you even pick small fights when things feel too good, not because conflict feels good, but because certainty feels unbearable. So you test without calling it a test. You get quieter, slower, slightly more distant, and watch what they do next. Will they notice, chase, or get irritated? Will they stay the same once you stop performing ease? These tests are rarely cold or calculated. Most are desperate little experiments run by a scared heart. But even scared experiments have consequences. The other person can feel pushed away by fears you never said out loud. That is how longing starts wearing the costume of indifference, and how self-protection gets mistaken for emotional maturity. Because readiness is not just wanting love, it is being willing to feel the discomfort of being loved well. And that discomfort is real. Good treatment does not only soothe old wounds, it exposes how much they still shape you. Or you try to stay low maintenance, not because you have no needs, but because needing feels like dangerous leverage. So you say, "I'm fine," very convincingly. Meanwhile, your body is begging for reassurance you cannot bring yourself to request. Then, when they don't magically sense it, you feel alone. Not because they failed you completely, but because silence made your oldest story feel true again. But underneath it is something sadder. If I need too much, I become unsafe to love. That belief can shape everything. The way you ask, the way you pull back, even the kind of people you feel drawn to. Sometimes unstable people feel easier at first. They fit the emotional rhythm your system already knows how to track. Healthy love can feel almost suspiciously plain in comparison. No intense guessing, no dramatic swings, no desperate decoding every silence. And for a system shaped by uncertainty, calm can feel empty before it starts to feel safe. That is why some people mistake chaos for chemistry. Not because they love pain, because unpredictability feels more emotionally legible than peace. Peace asks you to stop scanning, and stopping the scan can feel like giving up the very skill that once protected you. So even when a good person arrives, you may stay half convinced, half moved, half braced, half inside the relationship, and half near the exit. This split can make you feel impossible to satisfy. One part wants closeness, and another part treats closeness like a threat. That doesn't mean you're broken. It means your protection got very smart, and now it sometimes fires at the wrong target. Protection is useful when danger is real, but when safety arrives, old protection can break the very bridge you needed. And this doesn't stay private. It changes the tone of the entire relationship. It changes whether a soft touch feels comforting or exposing. It changes whether patience feels caring or quietly unsettling. It even changes how you remember good moments. Instead of resting in them, you ask what they will cost later. That future-oriented fear steals the present first. Before anything bad has happened, part of the relationship is already lived in defense. So you never quite arrive. You're there physically, but emotionally you're managing impact before impact exists. The tragedy is not that you don't feel enough. It's that you often feel so much that distance seems like the only way to stay functional. You may miss them while ignoring their message. You may crave their arms and still stiffen when they hold you too gently. You may trust their character more than you trust your ability to survive if they matter. So you ration closeness instead of receiving it. This is why people who don't trust good treatment often look confusing from the outside. They are fighting two realities at once. The present reality says, this person is here. The older reality says, don't believe it too early. You do not bully yourself into secure love. You build tolerance for the truth that kindness is not always a setup. And that tolerance grows slowly, usually through repeated moments where care is offered and you resist the urge to make it suspicious. It grows when you notice the story your body is telling. Then gently compare it to what is actually happening in front of you. Not every warm text is manipulation. Not every patient person is hiding delayed cruelty. Not every calm connection is boring. Sometimes it only feels unfamiliar because your system is used to earning intensity instead of receiving steadiness. This is where honesty matters. Not performative honesty, but the kind that names what happens inside you before it turns into distance. Those senses can feel embarrassingly bare, but they are often kinder than acting cold and calling it self-respect. Because the people who truly care about you are not mind readers. They can respond to your truth more easily than your silence. And no, good treatment does not mean every relationship is safe forever. Boundaries still matter, and consistency should still be observed. But suspicion is not the same as discernment. Suspicion looks for danger everywhere. Discernment looks carefully and stays connected to reality. Accuracy matters when your past keeps trying to narrate your present. Without it, old pain becomes a script every new person is forced to read. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is interrupt that casting. Not by trusting blindly, but by letting reality speak before fear finishes the sentence. Let them be who they are long enough to show you. Let consistency mean something before you explain it away. Let your body learn, in small doses, the care can arrive without a hidden invoice. The tenderness feel awkward without calling it wrong. Because receiving love is a skill for some people. An actual tolerance for being considered, soothed, and stayed with. You can learn to stay present for the good moment. You can notice your urge to retreat without automatically obeying it. You can ask one honest question instead of disappearing. You can reveal one real need instead of testing whether it will be guessed. None of that makes you weak. It makes you less ruled by old survival patterns pretending to be wisdom. But they still react when the lighting feels familiar. They still tense when warmth touches the exact places that once went unanswered. So be careful with the story you tell yourself. You are not hard to love because good treatment unsettles you. You are someone whose heart learned to equate steadiness with risk. Of course, it hesitates before relaxing into something real. That hesitation deserves understanding. It also deserves responsibility, because fear explained is not fear harmless. If you never name the pattern, it will keep speaking for you. It will turn quiet care into doubt and honest people into puzzles. It will make you protect yourself from being loved, then call the emptiness proof that nobody knows how to stay. But some people do know how to stay. The harder question is whether you can stay present long enough to feel it. Can you notice when your chest tightens and say, "This is old fear, not automatic truth"? That pause can change more than dramatic insight. Because healing in love is rarely one huge breakthrough. It is often smaller moments where you choose not to abandon yourself inside connection. You choose to speak before resentment forms. You choose to breathe before assuming the worst. You choose to let reassurance land for one extra second. You choose to believe consistency is information, not bait. And little by little, trust stops feeling like a cliff. It starts feeling like a muscle learning a movement it once avoided. The fear may not vanish completely, but it stops running the whole relationship from a locked room inside you. Then good treatment becomes easier to recognize. Not because you are naive, but because you no longer confuse calm with danger. You stop needing love to feel chaotic in order for it to feel real. You stop treating peace like the part that must be questioned first. And something quiet begins to happen. You feel cared for without immediately preparing your escape. You let warmth reach you before analysis interrupts it. You let someone's consistency mean exactly what it shows, at least for today. That is not blind trust. That is emotional adulthood with its eyes open. It is knowing people can disappoint you and still refusing to punish tenderness for crimes it is not committed. It is courage without performance. Maybe the deepest shift is not learning how to chase better love. Maybe it is learning how to stop distrusting it when it finally appears. Maybe your next chapter does not begin with finding a perfect person. Maybe it begins with noticing how often fear makes safety look false. And maybe that changes the whole story. Not all at once, but enough for your heart to stop treating kindness like a trick. So if good treatment makes you uncomfortable, that does not make you ungrateful. It means love is touching a bruise you learn to hide. And bruises ache more when something gentle finds them. That tenderness is not the injury. It only reveals where it still lives. Which is why the answer is not to become colder. The answer is to become honest enough to stay warm without pretending it feels easy. Because the people who don't trust good treatment are often the ones who needed it most. They are not empty of love. They are crowded with caution. But longing cannot build intimacy by itself. At some point, it has to risk being seen. And maybe that is the quiet truth underneath all of this. The problem was never that you didn't want love. The problem is that part of you still believes love becomes dangerous the moment it becomes real, so you keep doubting what could finally hold you. But one day, if you're willing, you may notice the difference between danger and devotion. And that difference may feel almost unbearably soft at first. Stay there a second longer. That softness may be the first honest thing your heart has trusted in years.